Oh no, he's got rubber gloves on. Tonight we're going to be talking about Karen Reed. How in the world did that hair, that one little hair, and the piece of glass stick to Karen Reed's car for many, many travels back and forth during a nor'easter? One of the biggest, by the weatherman's testimony and by many, many others who talked about how bad the wind was, where we couldn't set up a tent. We had to get a leaf blower to clear the snow because the conditions were so bad. But the conditions weren't so bad that the one little piece of John O'Keefe's hair stuck to the car. Buckle up.
Well, so we started off with two troopers that were in the crime scene search unit, or whatever they call themselves, CSS. Okay, and apparently they don't do that much. They go out with civilians from the lab, and the lab people do most of the forensics. And it appears so far that all these CSS troopers, all they do is photographs and latent fingerprints. In this case, they were called out for the hospital. They were called out for the car, and days later, mind you. Okay, for the car being days later. The hospital, they were there to photograph the clothing in the hospital, but they didn't collect anything and rush it to the lab. Then they got called out for the car, and the civilian came out, and so we had testimony from two of the crime scene people, and they one went over to the Albert's house to take long-range overall photographs. Okay, not close-ups, not medium range. Originally that was the task, and then they weren't called out for any of the pieces that Proctor and Sergeant Uri and the late chief of Canton PD found. So they weren't called out to document any of those things. Mm-hmm. Really, for the life of me, I'm just baffled how they do things up there, and how this judge is allowing all this evidence in with no chain of custody. They seem to think that if you label a bag, that's the chain of custody, and that's not the chain of custody. And they seem also to think that if you photograph the bag with the 6 red Solo cups in it, that's chain of custody. Also, now we have a little discrepancy in testimony now, because we had some previous testimony which stated that the civilian crime lab personnel took the Stop and Shop bag with the red cups back to the laboratory, and we learned today she did not. Yeah. She only took 2 swabs, stuck it in 1 cup, and we'll talk about that because there was a lot of problems with her methodologies, in my opinion.
There are 2 pointers in front of you. Would you mind
overexposed again, Ed?
Pointing
yes,
out?
Totally. I think everybody can see this, right? That it's overexposed.
Yeah, this whole area.
Yes, you can also look at the reflection in the paint. Okay. No, right there. You got it. That is her evidence sticker that is in the overexposed section of that bumper. Okay. Yes. And it's being reflected onto the paint of the vertical section that has the LX570 written there.
How pathetic is that? We're seeing this clear as day on the reflection, but you can't see shit. Where the photographer, it's not her, it's the photographer who took those images. Again, she stated, "I do not take pictures."
Now you can see the tape.
So I can see one of the
on the bumper.
But I just see one of the larger pieces of
we can move that
glass right here. Would it be better if I use this one?
Could you?
Right here.
Yeah.
So this piece
right
here is a larger apparent piece of glass. I think that was the largest one that I saw.
That's horrible.
Those 2 white stickers, could you tell us what those are?
This sticker, this sticker here is marking where the apparent pieces of glass are.
Is there another sticker above, or is that?
I'm not sure. If you could close up, I'm not sure what that is.
Now he's going to the reflection.
Yes. So that is another sticker, and next to that sticker are additional pieces of glass.
Yowza, yowza, yowza. I mean, this
I would
was
say that's an apparent piece of glass.
You can't make this shit up, Ed.
this was like a Perry Mason moment.
With court's permission, you can zoom in on the area a little bit bigger than that. Capture all of the placards. Zooming in at this point, and I would ask you, Ms. Hartnett, do you recognize this photo? It's zoomed a little bit. Do you still recognize it?
Yes, I do.
Is that a photograph that you caused to be taken at the Sally Port on February 1st, 2022?
I believe it was February 2nd, right? Did we, or it's February 1st now?
February 1st,
We agreed it's February 1st. My apologies. Yes, on February 1st, I did request that photo be taken of the apparent pieces of glass.
Okay, and can you, I know you can't see necessarily every piece. Can you use your laser pointer and point to a piece?
Sure.
Okay, got it. So that's the largest of the pieces, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And it's correct that none of these pieces of apparent glass were embedded in the bumper. They weren't dug in and stuck into that hard plastic, correct?
No, I do not have that. I do not have that notation that they were embedded, just they were on the bumper.
She found a piece of glass just sitting on top of the rear bumper, just sitting there, not embedded, but just sitting there. Okay. And then she also found a hair. She found some scratches in the vehicle, but she didn't do anything with it. She didn't, besides photograph it. She didn't cut it out. She didn't sample it. She didn't send it to the lab for microscopy. She didn't send it to the lab for any biological, chemical, or any other type of testing on that. She found one hair stuck to the vertical rear section of the right rear section of the vehicle.
According to your notes, the glass pieces that we're looking at on the back of this bumper would have traveled, let's call it for round figures, about 60 miles in a blizzard before you saw it.
I don't know when the glass pieces were ended up on the bumper, so I couldn't say.
You saw these 5 pieces just sitting perched on the top of the bumper, not embedded in any way, correct?
That's correct.
And you recovered those with little bitty tweezers, correct?
Yes.
And you'll correct me. That apparent hair was not sitting on the horizontal bumper, but on a vertical portion of the quarter panel, correct?
That's correct.
Did you find the hair, or was that hair pointed out to you by somebody else?
I believe I located the hair.
How exactly was that hair secured to that vertical panel, if you can explain that?
It didn't appear to be secured in any way. It was just on that quarter panel.
Okay, so it wasn't taped,
No,
it wasn't glued,
no,
wasn't stapled,
no.
it was not affixed in any way whatsoever. It was just perched on that vertical panel of the SUV, correct?
That's correct.
So that hair potentially would have had to make that same 60-mile round trip in the same blizzard.
At the time, I don't know when that hair was deposited on the vehicle.
Right. And it didn't take you much to remove that hair, correct?
And Ms. Hartnett, in this photograph, what, if anything, is depicted that you denoted something to sort of reflect or further examine at a later?
There's pieces of apparent glass here on the bumper.
And do you recognize what's depicted in those photographs, ma'am?
Yes, I do.
And what do you recognize those to be?
This is the rear passenger exterior right below the taillight on the Lexus SUV. This is the area of the rear passenger side of the vehicle just below the taillight.
Ms. Hartnett, do you observe another sort of sticker or placard that you placed in that area?
Yes, I do. I'm sorry, I can't see what the letter is on it, so I'm not sure what that's in reference to.
Yeah, this whole area.
Yes, you can also look at the reflection in the paint. Okay, no, right there, you got it. That is her evidence sticker that is in the overexposed section of that bumper. Okay,
Yes.
and it's being reflected onto the paint of the vertical section that has the LX 570 written there.
How pathetic is that?
She searched the undercarriage of the vehicle looking for blood, and she tested some things, and there was nothing there. She didn't find any blood on the outside of the car. She put a scale down next to it, and somehow in between their movements, the hair changed its position. between two different photographs. Okay. And she wouldn't acknowledge it. I mean, it was clear as day to the jury, in my opinion, and anybody watching, that it had moved. And all she would have had to say is, yeah, it appears it moved. I don't know how it moved, but it appears to have moved from one position to the other in the two different photographs. And that's, well, goes to me, tells you how fragile the hair is, because it is considered trace transfer evidence, right? And it wasn't glued there, wasn't taped there. It moved between two photographs. Okay. And she wouldn't admit that, you know, the glass and the hair took this journey from the Albert's house to John O'Keefe's house, from John O'Keefe's house to Jen McCabe's house, back to John O'Keefe's house. And then later, from John O'Keefe's house to her house. And then from her house back to the Canton PD on a flatbed truck, that it was unlikely that that hair or that glass, which had just been sitting there, would have survived this trip and not blown away in a nor'easter and with winds gust, and they gave her the wind gust and all that, but she wouldn't admit to it. Okay, so but she did say, I don't know when it got there.
Where was these items from 1/29/2022 up until May of 2023? Who had control of these items, all of this evidence?
Well, she left Canton PD on the 1st of February with them.
Ed, you want to set this up?
Yeah, so he conducted an experiment where he got a ballistic arm, which is ballistic gelatin surrounding the skeleton of the hand, the wrist, elbow, the forearm and bicep up to the shoulder area. Okay, it's encased in ballistic gelatin, and he took the Lexus taillight, welded a brace to the back of his SUV at the height that the taillight would actually be at. And he had an assistant hold out the arm as he was driving to reach 25 miles an hour. And the assistant released the arm, and it impacted the Lexus taillight for Karen Reed's specific vehicle. And that's the setup that he had come up with.
Now,
And
Ed, how accurate is this test? Because, of course, they're going forward motion. It's the same speed, so I believe it should be the same impact, but it also is someone holding out an arm. So it's not like a person, 180 pounds, 200-pound person being hit. It's just that mock arm. This is obviously, for those of you watching, this is not a real arm. This is, you know, like Ed said, it's, you know, how accurate is this?
You know, there's always going to be people that are going to complaining. Just like when I did my test, people were complaining. But the point of my test was, it was Newton's third law of physics, equal and opposite reactions. I could have broken that light by, you know, placing it down on a surface and whacking it with the hammer. I could have done that. But the point is, I have to create a lot of force, a lot of energy to crack the taillight. And it's not going to give you 47 pieces. And the equal and opposite effect is what you're going to see here. Yeah. Okay, so let's run this.
All right. You want sound on this, right?
Yeah. Hey, Tom, you shouldn't be eating ballistic gelatin. Okay.
Oh, for Christ's sake.
$25-mile-an-hour arm versus taillight. Here we go.
And it's got the sweatshirt type material over the arm. He had to let that go, because if he didn't let that go, he would have been injured himself.
Right on this corner piece, I hit about right here. But if I would have gotten a higher hit, it might not have busted it at all. I've got the arm and I'm here.
So she would have to have reversed in that 25 miles an hour and gotten up to speed. Now, here's the arm. Look at the damage.
Are both bones in. Here's Buddy's arm. He's got a cracked, broken elbow. His elbow is broken. Those two bones in the forearm are completely in two. That was just from the impact. His wrist is broken. See the bone dislodged right there? That's gone. That knuckle is damaged.
And you don't have any tail light damage to the skin.
My God, Ed.
Oh no!